Welcome back to 8% Nation. Now, today we're going to dive into another founder. Now, this founder is Noble Drew Ali. Make sure you press the like button, by the way, and comment. Anyway, we have a timeline. Now, the good thing about this is we have a timeline that we could follow. Okay, so we're about to follow it. Now, Noble Drew Ali was born in 1886 as Thomas Drew Ali, as you can see in line 1. Now, during that year or around those years, his mother passed away and he was adopted by his sister. Now, he was adopted by his sister, Princess Anne, who was married to James Washington Drew, and that's where he got the name Drew from. That was his adopted dad's name. And from 1886 until 1898, by that time, Thomas Drew was labeled as a laborer when in the census that they were doing at the time, because at back then there were no child labor laws. He would have been 12, so there were no child labor laws. He was allowed to work, so he would be labeled as a laborer. He was allowed to work to help out with the family. Maybe that's another reason why he was adopted, because they knew that later on he'll grow up and help out with bills and stuff. Help the family out. Okay, now at 12, and he was also working along with his dad. Now you could see, and from 1898 he was a laborer, and in 1900s they started working at a farm. Now this time is very crucial in 1900, because around 1904 the Russo Wars broke out. Now, the Russo Wars was a war based on North Korea between Japan and Russia. Now, Japan felt that Russia, who then had a contract with North Korea to use North Korean port for commercial and military use, felt that Russian was using their influence too much on North Korea. They felt that it should have been their influence. It should be their influence because it's closer to their territory. So with believing that, they attacked the Russians and won. And the African Americans back in the States thought that was a victory, because they have never seen another race defeated the white man in their lifetime. So that was a big victory for them. So they claimed that victory as theirs. So this is where later on he came out with the term the Asiatic black man, because there was a period in his life where people were celebrating Asians for winning that war. African Americans were celebrating Asians. They would try to relate to them and whatnot. So that was around the 1900s. He was working in the farm, and that war broke out, which only lasted for a year, from 1904 to 1905. And that war was called the Russo Wars. Now, in 1910, he was a longshoreman in North Virginia. Now, what is a longshoreman? Let's find out what's a longshoreman. Now, a longshoreman is a person employed in a port to load and unload ships. So he was working at the port in Virginia. Then, during the Great Migration in 1917, he moved to Newark, New Jersey, which was and worked at the port of Newark. Now, it's there. That's when I think his whole experience of dealing with different cultures got more vibrant because he lived around several black masonry lodges, a lot of Protestant church that was around at the time, and there was a mosque that was established by, let me get his name. Hold on for a second. By Abdul Hamid Subamina. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce his name. Abdul Hamid. Let's just call him Abdul Hamid. Yeah, in 1913, who was an Arabian, who was an Arab, who claimed that he had the authority from his, he had the religious authority to start from Mecca to open the temple in 1913. And as you can see, in 1913, this is very important because Thomas Drew moved to Newark in 1917, meaning he wasn't even around Newark, New Jersey in 1913. Then, so meaning when he moved to Newark, the temple was already established, so he must have been influenced by the temple because of all the teaching that Mr. Abdul Hamid was Subiman was teaching. I'm sorry about the name. I'm butchered the name. Was teaching, and who claimed that he came from Mecca and he had the religious right to open the temple. I don't know what that means, but and back then there was no fact checking. There's no way you could check somebody if they make those claims. You're just gonna have to take their words for it. And I think Thomas sort of knew that. This is why he claimed that he opened the temple in 1913, that he established the Morrish Science Temple in 1913. Anyway, moving on. Now, where we at in the timeline? Yes, we're still in 1917, and in 1918, Mr. Thomas registered as registered for the draft for the World War I. And one big reason why is because of economy, basically. And by the war, I think he was rejected for some reason, and because of most likely his health issue, but he did ended up working on a submarine plant who contracted with Japan. But he ended up working in a submarine plant, and that only thing is that job didn't last because the war was over within a few years. And as you could see, simultaneously he started preaching, because I think by the end of that year or during those years, he was known as a Professor Drew, the Egyptian adept. And I was still in New York, New Jersey. Then he started going around his preaching, recruiting more people. And the way he would recruit people is by using his past experience, such as he had a burn mark on his arm. He would use that to tell people that his biological aunt, threw him in a furnace and was saved by Allah's angel to help come spread this message, because he was needed to spread this message. So a lot of people will fall for that because he'll actually show the scar. And like I said, there was no way to fact check. He could have gotten the scar from work and what have you. It may not have been even his aunt, because there was no proof that his aunt was even abusive. she was uneducated, but I don't think she was that extreme when it comes to abuse. And by 1925, the temple was already established, which had become the Morrish. Sorry. By then, it had, which is pretty interesting. It had became the Morrish Science Temple of America. Yes, the Morrish Science Temple of America, because one of their members got arrested for treasoning, and in order to show that they were more patriotic, they changed the name to Morrish Science Temple of America, and started adopting like little American ritual. They would respect the flag, learn the American laws, like little stuff like that, because they were scared that they would get locked up, basically. But by 1925, he had passed away from sorry, but yes, Thomas Jewell died on July 20th, 1929, from tuberculosis. Sorry, what the hell? From the tuberculosis and bronchopneumonia. That is according to his death certificate. So although people might say different, but according to his death certificate, he died from tuberculosis and pneumonia. Now, he's a key essential to all this, because it's from him that Mr. Wallace D Ford got most of his teaching from, and started going from door to door and met Elijah Poole, who later became Elijah Muhammad, and founded the Nation of Islam. Now, this is why I had to dig into more. So, in my opinion, he's really the founding father of NOI and the Morrish Science Temple of America, and I would also say the 5%ers, because he was the first person to start like spreading that ideology. He combined like all his experience together and created a whole new religion out of it, and a lot of people were able to relate to it. Although he changed his name to make him seem more superior to his peers, because he didn't want them to see them as equal, so he had to change his name a few times, as you can see from Professor to Prophet. And as those were changing, his psyche was also changing, I would say. So anyway, this is how this whole myth started, and I think it was pretty interesting. Please comment and subscribe, and until next time, thank you.